All right, we are officially on. So welcome everybody. This is the last webinar of the school year, and we are just delighted to have Cornell Lab of Ornithology joining us this evening. I want to go ahead and just introduce the topic. It's Cornell Lab of Ornithology, building local connections and global perspectives for K-12 students with citizen science. And our guest tonight is Jen Fee. She is the manager of K-12 education at the lab. And we have worked with her for many, many years. I've known Jen, gosh, I think we're coming up on 15 years now, friend.
Probably so.
I think so. So Jen's the manager of K-12 programs, as I said, and she and her team have a network of over 30,000 educators across the United States. And their focus is on citizen science and inquiry, and they just have a plethora of really fabulous resources that teachers across the United States and now internationally, even in our beloved Peru, are using. She's also the co-author of Citizen Science, 15 Lessons That Bring Biology to Life. And we're just thrilled to have her here tonight as a friend and as a colleague. So I'm going to turn it over to Jen. I'll stop my screen share and I'm going to let her take it away.
Awesome, thank you. Let's hope that shows up. Excellent. It's so nice to be here, and thank you, Krista, for inviting me. And it's awesome to see a few familiar faces among us. So thank you, everybody, for coming on this Thursday before a long Memorial Day weekend. We'll start you off thinking about birds in Peru, which is a kind of nice way, I think, to launch out into the weekend. Just a quick reminder, if you haven't downloaded Merlin, please do so. You want to click to open it and install your local bird pack, which can take some time. So we're going to do a little activity about midway through the presentation. So if you could get that rolling now, if you haven't, that way you can play with us later on. All right. As Krista said, I'm pleased to share tonight about eBird citizen science and running the gamut from using eBird Citizen Science and the Merlin app to connect locally as well as build your students' global perspective. And before we get started, I was hoping in the chat window, everybody could share where they are, what grade they teach, and what is the thing you're looking forward to the most this summer. So where you are, grade you teach or what you do, and what you're looking forward to this summer.
Jen, are you able to see the chat?
Yes, I sure can. Thank you. So got Salt Lake City and Orlando, and Richmond, high school and elementary level as well. Some people are looking forward to teaching this summer. That's amazing. I'm exhausted, and I can't imagine how exhausted teachers must be after this crazy year we've had. But I guess if you are in a webinar on Thursday night before Memorial Day, you are the creme de la creme. So I appreciate you coming. Nobody, I don't think, said birding, did they, Susan, as their favorite thing? Maybe when you travel, you're looking forward to going birding, or maybe while I'm sitting by the pool, I'm looking forward to birding. All right. For those of you that aren't very familiar with the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, we're a membership-based institution, and our building is physically located in Ithaca, New York, sort of central New York. We have a visitor center, and I welcome all of you to come and visit us this summer or at some other point. And we have a trifold mission focused on research, education, and citizen science focused on birds. And what I love about my role at the lab as the K-12 program manager is that I get to combine the mission of the lab, sharing our amazing research and our cool citizen science projects with K-12 teachers. And we do that through a variety of resources and training, and we aim to really notch kids up a ladder that starts with just simple nature connection. So I'd love to reach teachers who maybe aren't getting their kids outside enough, but you know, are aware of the social emotional benefits of getting kids outside, or interested in kind of dipping their toes in, all the way to teachers who are super involved in outdoor citizen science or indoor citizen science, and really building those observations in nature and through citizen science into full-on inquiry investigations. So today, most of what I'll share with you is super brief. We could easily spend a 3-day workshop on eBird, and I have in fact done that, but we're just going to kind of dip our toes in and get a little bit of familiarity. And I hope that you can use Susan and I as a resource moving forward. My contact information will be in the last slide. And if you ever need any assistance in this, let me know. So before we launch, just in case, and I know some of you will be well aware about citizen science, but perhaps some of you are new to it. When I say the word citizen science, what is the definition or the connotation, or what are some of the words that you think of? And just add those to the chat. Yep. Dawn and Christy and Michael are all sharing this common themes that I see is like the public, normal people, lay people, the general public, helping with real science, getting people involved in data collection. Often it is data collection. Exactly right. And there are a growing number of citizen science projects. Citizen science has been around for maybe about 100 years, since like Christmas bird counts and things of that sort, quite some time ago. But the field of citizen science has really flourished. And it's this idea that regular people can be the eyes and ears of scientists and help contribute to our understanding of global biodiversity. Oops. Yeah. So it's the idea that no matter what the project, whether it's stream monitoring or butterflies or many projects based on phenology or insects, birds, that people can collect data that is useful to scientists. And maybe you've participated in some projects, and if you'd like to share the names of those projects or your recommendations for good projects, feel free to do so in chat. There are projects in which volunteers participate with scientists to answer real world questions. And at the lab, I think we value that real world part of it quite a lot. We really would like for the data that's coming into the lab to be useful for science. So not just collected data and then it's put in a drawer, or put in a cabinet, or put in a big computer database, but actually utilized by scientists. And in our case at the lab, because we have such a strong conservation focus, we'd really like for the data that you and perhaps your students are collecting to be used to inform conservation decisions. So as I mentioned earlier, there are citizen science projects from ants to zebras and everything in between. If you like ants or worms or stars or mice, mammals, squirrels, there's probably a project for you. One of the best places to find out about citizen science projects is through SciStarter, and maybe Susan could share a quick link to that. SciStarter has a project finder, and you can basically go to the educator tab and choose by indoor outdoor projects, grade band, all that sort of thing, to try to hone in on some projects that might be useful in your classroom. And these are some of the projects over the years that teachers have utilized. And like I said, if you want to share others in the chat, you're more than welcome. What I love about citizen science, or one of the things I love about citizen science, is I think it helps us put the pieces together of what's happening around our globe. So, you know, a scientist who cared very, very much about American crows might be able to spend their entire life studying American crows, as one of my colleagues, Kevin McGowan, does. But when he's able to utilize citizen science, he can see American crow populations in the context of the global population of crows. He can compare it to other populations of crows. For example, when West Nile was impacting birds, especially corvids, the crow and jay family, he was able to make conclusions and understand, for example, what our local population was doing as compared to other populations around the country. And I like the concept or the vision of citizen science that a 7th grader once wrote in an essay, which is scientists can't be everywhere, but we can be the eyes and ears of scientists. So basically we are extensions of those scientists in making these observations. Again, you can find projects through the SciStarter website. So let me switch gears because, as you know, I'm from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and so we're going to talk a lot about birds today. And I want to share with you my favorite project at the lab, which is eBird. eBird is any bird, anywhere, anytime. And so it's a global project that basically you can spend as little or as much time on it as you'd like. Before we launch into that, let's think about why birds as a potential study organism. And I know some of you are super duper into birds, but in the standards, for example, the NGSS standards or your state standards, if you don't use NGSS, you may never find the word bird mentioned. Yet, how can birds be a good tool or a good organism connection for your students? And or why do you watch birds if you watch birds? Or if you've used birds in your classroom, as I know Phil has, what are your students jazzed about when it comes to birds? Yeah, Phil saying birds are everywhere. And are they everywhere just certain parts of the times of the year? Because like insects are everywhere, but here in New York, they're only really out from maybe February or March through October, November. You know, so I can't see them year round, and certain species are very short-lived. Yeah, lots of people mentioning, you know, connections to conservation, evolution, and climate change. There are massive amounts of diversity, highlighting the interconnectedness of things. Thanks, Seth. That's a beautiful way to put it. And besides that, if you just look at this picture, I think birds have a special way of capturing people's imagination. They sing and they fly and they have so many different patterns and colors of plumages. They're just really fascinating. And I think the other interesting thing about birds is you can learn to identify them with a bit of practice. You know, they have so much diversity, and you can begin to recognize your local species, even by call and or by sight. And I can even start to recognize my local birds by their behavior if I see them from far away. So I think they do capture our imagination. You know, there's just such a, for example, a sign of spring. I know that the Ithaca winter is coming to a close when I hear the red-winged blackbird making his song. I know to look up for potentially a hawk or something cool when I see the blue jays going, Jay, Jay, Jay in my neighborhood, and I look around for that. So there's this, I think, cool connection that we can build with birds and just get to know them when we start to notice them. Right. As Phil mentioned, birds are everywhere all the time, which makes them a great study organism. And I know Phil, for example, has a bird blind at his school, and his kids will go out in the dead of winter and count birds at his feeder station and get quite a variety of birds there, you know, in his suburban school. Lots of diversity. Getting to what some of you mentioned, sort of the conservation aspects. Perhaps you saw the study. It came out about, it's probably about 18 months ago now, just prior to COVID, the fall prior to everything shutting down. Big, massive study was published using eBird and other citizen science data that basically showed that nearly 3 billion birds were lost from our planet in the last 50 years. So since 1970, 3 billion birds have disappeared. And the number and kind of birds, or the kinds of birds that have disappeared run the gamut. There are a few kinds of birds that are doing better. For example, ducks due to wetland conservation, but grassland birds, desert birds, many of our common songbirds, insectivorous birds have really decreased in their population. And again, this type of study and this type of finding wouldn't be possible without citizen science data. It's hard, to remember or to think back in my lifetime. Are birds increasing? Are they decreasing? Am I seeing fewer or more of certain species? But with citizen science data, we can see definitely some of the decreases that are happening and understand which species those are happening to, and draw conclusions about their life history that might be contributing to their decline and or stability or increase over time. So this was a real wake-up call. And I've heard from many teachers who have used eBird Citizen Science that their kids think it's so cool when these kinds of studies come out or released, and they're like, well, my data went into creating that understanding of scientists. And yet still, I think many of us, even those of us that really may like birds or appreciate nature, have what I phrase bird blindness. Like, we go through our days, we go through our lives, and we just don't notice birds. The lab saw a huge awakening of people noticing birds when COVID hit, because it happened at spring migration time, right? So mid-March, people were being sent home, people were being told, stay in your yard, don't go out. And a lot of people were turning their attention outside. And we had more eBird submissions, more people interested in birds. Our question and answer desk was off the charts busy, because people just took off their bird blinders. They had nothing else to do, and they started looking outside and noticing birds. And so I like to think that once your eyes are open to birds, it's hard to put the blinders back on, and you are more cognizant of the birds in your environment. And as I said, with some of the tools I'm going to show you today, you'll be able to start putting names to that. You'll be able to help your students start putting names to those birds. So when I show this diagram, a lot of people think, wow, that's the night sky, because you can see the outline of countries. You can see very well the United States, the outline of Australia, of Africa. Europe is pretty bright. India is very bright. Parts of Central America and down the eastern coast of South America are pretty bright. But what this actually is the places in the planet that we've gotten eBird data from. So you can see from this illustration that this is truly a global project, and we've got data coming in from all corners of the globe. You can even see popular cruise ship routes showing up as dots in this map, because people are collecting data and noticing pelagic birds and so forth on their cruises. In terms of scale, eBird is massive. We've got 500 million observations on about 40+ million checklists. We have over 500,000 participants, and we've got data on over 10,000 species. You might think, well, what's that compared to? That's pretty much like 99.5 or 8% of the bird species on the planet. So even the most rare species we've been able to collect eBird data on. Every country in the world at over 2 million locations. So the scale is massive, and it's going up exponentially over time. So what a gift I think that our data will give to scientists in 20 or 30 years, when they can understand how populations change, because the amount of data that's coming in is just staggering. So basically what eBird is a database that holds bird data from people submitted around the world. We do have some protocols we need to understand, for example, where you were when you birded, when you weren't birding, the date and the effort, because as we know, birds are seasonal, many of them are migratory, And so we need to understand where you were, how long you counted, what the date was, and then a list of species. So it's basically a 3-step process. You can do it on the website, but now there's an app available, and I find the app to be incredibly user-friendly. It's made the number of checklists that I submit go up because the smartphone is smart and it tells you what date it is, it tracks your distance, it tracks your time, all of that is done for you, and it just makes data submission so very easy. As I was thinking about doing this presentation in collaboration with Morpho, I was thinking, boy, I need to, think globally, and usually I'm more focused, I think, on some of the local impacts or the local things that you can do with eBird. But as I was thinking about this, I think you'd appreciate how much of the data we make available to the public and how much you can see through that data. So I pulled this, it's just a map of the hotspots across the country. Hotspots are just locations that are publicly open for birding. And as you can see from the scale on the right-hand side, the red areas are where 600 plus species have been observed. And that's at one site. Could be a park, could be a nature center, could be Explorama Lodge, for example. 600 species at one site is really impressive, especially for some of these sites that don't have tons of checklists. So look across this globe, where are the hotspots? Where are the places on the planet, or what are the places, the habitats like, for example, where you're seeing the orange and the red indicating high bird biodiversity? You can go ahead and share your ideas in the chat. Countries, habitats, kind of parts of the world. What do you notice? What patterns? Close to the equator, near mountain ranges, close to water, tropical forests, maybe something having to do with fewer people. Oh, thank you so much for sharing those links, everybody. When I look at this, I see that red line going across India. I'm not very familiar with India, so I don't know what that is. Is it a mountain range, or maybe that's a river? I don't know if we have any people that have been to India and can give us clues. As someone mentioned, there are some real hot spots in Africa. Looks to be a lot of biodiversity in the tropics. Definitely looks like coast, transitional habitats, so where there's a mix of habitats, like maybe you've got some wetlands. Could be the Himalayas. I don't know. I'm going to look that up though after. You'll learn in a minute about our I Wonder board and how you can track scientific questions. And I try to get in the habit of being like, oh, I'm curious about that. I want to write that down and look it up. So that's my I Wonder for tonight is, what the heck is going on across that red line in India? In any case, you can query eBird and come up with this map in about 2.5 seconds, even if you're a beginner. It's quite user-friendly. Another thing that we have produced with this data that teachers and students tend to really like is these animated STEM models. We know that modeling is in the standards, and what's cool about this is not an annual migration of black-polled warblers. It's an illustration of over decades of eBird citizen science data and filled in with data about temperature, population density, precipitation. I think there's 40 something factors that are incorporated into this model. We wanted to get as fine an idea as possible about where birds are and when they travel and where their hotspots are. So this is the black-polled warbler. It comes up in June, July, breeds in Canada and northern US, and then goes down into places like Colombia and Ecuador. Its winter range is pretty tight. When it comes up and breeds in the summer, you'll see that its summer range is quite broad, spreads out. A lot of kids have the misconception that birds are traveling to like escape the cold, but realistically, they're following the insects. You know, they need to expand into areas that there's less competition for food resources because they have to feed their babies. And we have them going up into North America to breed. There are, I think at this point now, hundreds of these maps available. They're called STEM models. And I love to do them with students or teacher groups where you do some comparisons, you know, warblers versus ducks versus some of our non-migratory songbirds like cardinals. And those are available on the eBird website. And Susan, if you can find them, you could probably share a link to them pretty well to that list of all the possibilities. So when you go to the eBird database, you at the top nav bar will see you've got options to submit your data, options to explore data in eBird. My eBird is where all my stats are. The science tab is probably where a lot of the STEM models and other things are. When I clicked on the Explore tab, this is the menu that comes up. So you can explore species. If you want to understand more about black-polled warblers, or if you want to query your favorite bird, you can do that there. You can explore regions. One of the things that I like to do with explore regions is if I'm traveling to a new area to give a workshop or to go birding or just vacation with my family or whatever, I'll explore the region and figure out what are the top birds that I might see in that area. But I did want to show you what I've circled here, which is bar charts, which I use to create this bar chart in this line graph. And again, this is all automatic. I chose the 5 species that I wanted to look at. And you'll see that this data is from Texas. I just chose Texas. And you can see across the very bottom, the color key, and I've also color coded the pictures of the birds: bald eagle, northern mockingbird, yellow warbler, northern cardinal, and red-winged blackbird. So take just a second. What patterns do you observe here? So these are Texas birds. Thanks, Michael, for sharing that link. One thing that strikes me, for example, right off is the northern mockingbird and the northern cardinal have super similar frequency graphs. So this is frequency graph along the y-axis is, oh my God, it's been so long since I've taught this. The y-axis is this one, is the frequency of reports. So basically, if you go out birding in Texas, what are your chances that you're going to see a bald eagle or a northern mockingbird throughout the year? And then you've got the date range across the x-axis. What do you think is going on with the yellow warbler? You can just share in the chat if you don't mind, or feel free to unmute if you want to share some thoughts verbally as well. Yep. You're on the right track. Migratory bird. And what's happening with the yellow warbler is it passes through Texas on its way up, just like we saw with the black-polled warbler earlier, and then passes back through Texas on its way south. So it doesn't breed in Texas. It's probably breeding in Canada and New York and other places, but basically it's the migration through. So if you want to see a yellow warbler in Texas, you want to look around, looks like May 1st to the 15th. And again in the fall, looks like the best time, oops, sorry about that. I can't click my screen. The best time is, September, October. The least common bird, the bald eagle. Present in Texas, it looks like in very low numbers year round. Maybe about 3% of people see it in the winter, hardly any in the summer. This is also, even though the bald eagle isn't truly migratory, it shifts its range a bit. Very easy to make these kinds of charts and compare different warblers to each other, different ducks to each other, that kind of thing. And you can run this for any state fairly easily. The other thing I want to show you as far as the Explore tab on eBird is Explore Hotspots. One of the reasons for that is I know you all like to travel, and many of you have been down into the Amazon. And so hotspots is a great way to explore a place that you're going to go birding and also to discover great places to go birding. So I looked up our favorite Explorama Lodge, and you can see that on 674 checklists, there have been 505 species reported. That's a lot of species on not that many checklists, because for some locations, we've got tens of thousands of checklists. So you can zoom in on here and in fact, look, for example, if you want to go to this part of the Amazon, or if you're going to go to Colombia or whatever, you can look at the hotspots there and find where most birds have been reported. When I click on the hotspot, I can figure out when the last checklist was submitted and by whom, if they've opted into revealing their name, and on what date. And then I can, for example, here we've got Randy Morgan. I'm sure you know him, Krista, I'm guessing. Yeah, and Phil. So Randy went birding there, 4th of March, 2020. That's the last sighting there, which probably means that it's been closed since COVID, I'm guessing.
So, can I just interject here, because most of course Randy is on our faculty for our Educator Academy, and he's an entomologist, but he's turned into a full-fledged birder, to the point where we don't recognize him anymore. And you're absolutely right. We were literally on the second to last plane out of the country in March. And so that data that he submitted is probably some of the last people that were tourists that were actually out of those lodges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was surprised to see that since that time, there hasn't been any data submitted, which is kind of a shame. We're gonna have a 1.5-year gap basically, or a year gap until they start up. And you can see who's the submissions. I found birding buddies through eBird. When I went down to Mexico, I was like, who is this green jay Mayan birding that keeps submitting these checklists? And I just clicked on them, looked them up. They were a small organization, basically a husband and wife team that did a lot of birding, and I hired them to take me birding, and we've become friends, and they're awesome partners of the lab now. But there's so much that you can do with eBird. So here I've gone to Explorama Lodge. I know that the last species that was reported there was March 4th, 2020, and it was a ruddy pigeon. Well, what does a ruddy pigeon look like? I want to go down to Explorama. I want to see the ruddy pigeon. Well, then you can click on the ruddy pigeon's name and it'll take you to our page on that species. You can listen to it. You can see multiple pictures of it. You can learn about the life history of it. So it's such a great way. If you're going somewhere new, find the hot spots that you want to go to. And then you can learn about the birds before you ever get there and start to learn their ID. And I'm a bird nerd, right? I love nature of all sorts. So it's fun for me to just kind of poke around and learn more about birds. So I think citizen science is such an amazing way to help kids connect both locally with their own backyards and also globally. And sometimes I think, kids know more about the rainforest and the desert or I'm saying if you don't live in the rainforest or the desert, than they do about their own backyards. But I think that eBird and citizen science and making these observations can span the gap between understanding what's happening in your local environment and also connecting to and understanding what's happening globally. And I think birds are uniquely positioned to help make that happen. If you are not an eBirder but would like to be, or perhaps you're a long-term eBirder but didn't know, we did release an eBird Essentials course. My K-12 colleague collaborated on the course, and so it's definitely got an eye toward and sort of a central focus of trying to teach teachers how to use eBird. It's about a 2 to 3 hour course, and it's going to go through both data in and data out. So if you haven't gotten all the details of what I was saying, you want to know more about STEM models or how to use the Explore tab, I advise you to take that course, and it's just such a great resource. You can skip around in it. Again, it only take you an hour, probably about 2 hours to take the course. We also have a suite of lessons. The one lesson from each of the Gray Banded curriculums is available on our website as a free download. I encourage you to do that. These curricula are just built around the eBird Citizen Science Project, and they're designed to meet NGSS standards through the lens of eBird. So one question that I get, especially from people who are new to birding, is, whoa, that's a lot of species, 10,000 species and 700 species at one site. Like, how am I going to learn how to identify all those birds? Well, one thing is, unless you live in like Corpus Christi, Texas, or someplace that's like along a coast, really awesome bird habitat, you're probably only going to have like 20 to 30 birds that are truly common in your area, like your backyard birds. So don't think of it as, oh my gosh, I've got to know 10,000 species, but think of it, I might need to know 20 or 30 species fairly well, and I could be an excellent birder. We also have Merlin Bird ID Wizard, such a great resource. It's a free app. Hopefully all of you have downloaded it. We're going to practice it in just a minute. So at its core, Merlin, get that? Merlin is a bird and also a bird wizard, a bird ID wizard. Merlin will ask you 5 simple questions about the bird, including where you were, what date, because your smartphone's smart, it automatically kind of fills that in for you, how big the bird was, and then up to 3 main colors that you noticed on the bird, and then what the bird was doing. And like magic, Merlin will give you a most likely list of species based on your location, your date. And it's a smart app, machine learning, so that the more data that we get, the more refined Merlin becomes. Merlin is going to help you very quickly put the names on the birds that we talked about earlier. So I'd like to invite all of you to find out what your most common local birds are. I'm sorry if this doesn't work for you, it's only going to be a few minutes that we spend on this. But if you could open your Merlin app, hopefully you've gotten a bird pack downloaded. You click on Explore Birds. We'll go quickly, but if you get behind or have tech issues, just shoot me an email later and I can talk you through it later. So Explore Birds. At the bottom. And then the next step is you can hit that slider to figure out where you want to be. So for example, I'm going to keep it where I am now, Ithaca, New York, the date today, and I'm going to sort by most likely birds. And what Merlin is going to do is give me a list of what birds in Ithaca, New York are most popular right now, or are most seen. My top bird is American robin. Saw one today, gray catbird. They keep screaming outside my window and waking me up in the morning. Red-winged blackbird, blue jay, my very common backyard birds. And I can just scroll down and basically, I know most of these birds because they're common right here in Ithaca. I see all of these all the time. How about you? Did anybody have success in finding their list of local birds? maybe share your most common bird or two. So I've got American robin in Ithaca, New York. Where are you and where is your top, what is your top bird according to Merlin? Northern cardinal, Canada goose. It's interesting because if my second bird is the gray catbird, which is super frequent around here at this time of year. If I had ran this workshop for you in March, I would have a different list because the gray catbird really isn't here in March, or so rare. And here again, you can learn about these species. So when you click that bird, I can get the sounds, I can see its range map, I can get ID info. And by using that slider button, if I'm going someplace cool or new, like I can see a list of all the places that I've been. I have been to Salt Lake to go birding, so I'll click that. Salt Lake today, what am I going to see? Interesting. I'm going to see the American robin there as well. House finch, mourning dove. So some of my same species, but I'm also going to see new ones like that black-chinned hummingbird. We don't have that here. So maybe I want to learn about what the black-chinned hummingbird looks like. And I can just look at its range map, ID info. I can listen to it. And that way, when I go to Salt Lake to visit one of you, I can't remember which one of you is from Salt Lake. I definitely would like to see the black-chinned hummingbird. So very easy to explore some of the same things that we can find in eBird in terms of the bar charts and finding local birds, but without the real data out aspects. So basically two apps. Merlin is the bird ID app and eBird is the data submission app. 1-2 punch. I just want to go into just a little bit because it's the third pillar that I shared earlier. We want to get kids outside. We want to get them involved in citizen science, both data in and data out. We also want to encourage them to make the observations that end up in authentic questions. And in fact, it could have been Phil that said this quote, taking kids outside and letting them do bird observation is a great way to motivate them to ask questions in science. And that is so true. When you find a bird doing something wacky, you want to ask questions like, what is that bird doing? I didn't know birds could drink from water fountains. I didn't know birds would be that thirsty. Will other species do this? Like, I can start asking so many different questions. Some of those questions I can look up the answers to. Others, I might need to do my own research project. And that's what we try to get kids to do. Let me give you an example. This is a 4th grader. Her teacher said, basically, do a science project, do a 2-week science project for science fair. You're going to have to make a poster about it and share your results. So Amy, 4th grade, noticed that when the neighbor's cat was out, she thought there were fewer birds at the feeder. She wanted to do a study about that. So she couldn't, unfortunately, borrow the neighbor's cat tethered outside. It could be a messy control to try to handle. So what she did is took her stuffed animal and put it in the tree, viciously guarding the feeder. The cat was there or missing for 1 week. She put the cat out for 1 week. And she basically said, how many cups of seed eaten? Without the cat, the birds ate about 4 cups of seed. Sorry for the question marks, it didn't translate correctly. And with the cat, the birds only ate about half a cup of seed. So she concluded that the cat is a good guard, but she thought over time, maybe these birds, I mean, birds are smart, right? They might learn that the cat was actually fake. And so she said, if I had to do a 2-week study again, what I'd like to do is put the cat out on day 1 and measure the seed eaten per day. And I think over time, probably the amount of seed is going to go up over time. I'm like, that is so brilliant. That's what we want our kids to do, right? It's creme de la creme of everything, of asking questions, creating their own study, and then doing exactly what scientists do, which is ask more questions and think in new directions. This is some of the hardest things I think that science teachers have to do. And so we spent a lot of time in thinking about resources that we could support you in turning these citizen science observations, outdoor observations into these kinds of studies like Amy's cat experiment. So we have a free curricula called Investigating Evidence. And it's free to download. It comes with student journal and student readings and a PowerPoint and all of this. We're actually revising it this summer to create, right now it's our K-12 resource. You have to adapt it up or down. It's probably written at about a middle school level, but we're gonna make a elementary version and a middle high school version. So coming soon next year. And what does this do for students? You know, many of you probably have heard of the classic draw a scientist test. Maybe you've even done it. When you do the draw a scientist test, you say, hey kids, when you think about science, what do you think about? Draw a picture. This is oftentimes what you get. What do we notice about this guy? Well, of course he's got on a lab coat. He's got a beaker. Oftentimes there's smoke coming out of the beakers. You know, he's got lots of books. It shows he has to read a lot. He's kind of chained to his desk. I mean, he's even got on bell bottoms, it looks like. I don't know if this is a cool guy that I'd want to hang out or be around. But when we start involving kids in citizen science data collection, when we start having them ask and answer their own questions of doing the science process, we can convert students into deeper science identity and a more accurate representation of what scientists do. So this is such a great quote. I think I was probably feeling emotional when I got this email from this teacher describing her experience, and she was so happy. It's the kind of thing that keeps you going. When she asked the kids to draw a scientist, almost all the girls drew a girl scientist, a few kids of color drew a scientist of color, and about half the kids drew their scientist outside. And so she felt like, because she's doing citizen science, because she's taking our kids outside, having them do their own studies, their perceptions of science and themselves as scientists are starting to change. And this is one of the drawings that I said, please show me these drawings of these amazingly diverse scientists. And here it is. I love that he doesn't have a body, just arms and legs. But you know, even that, he looks like somebody I might like to hang out with, much more so than the guy with the beaker. We shared some of those results in a paper a couple of years ago, Connected Science Learning. So if you want to know more about that study and sort of science identity development through citizen science, I welcome you to look at that. And I'll leave you with some questions, which we could unmute and chat about, and maybe you have some questions for us. We've got about 5 minutes left. And we've got some great resources like Phil. Phil has been doing my program since before it was my program. He's been doing it for over 20 years. So curious, like, what do you think of when you think about doing citizen science, both data in and out? What are some of the challenges that come to top of mind? And then also, what are some of the opportunities?
Please feel free, everybody, to unmute and ask away. Take advantage of it.
Yeah, and of course, ask your own questions if you have them. I know, thank you, Susan, so much for monitoring the chat and responding there.
This is Seth, buddy. In terms of like opportunities, one thing that someone was asking me about eBird the other day, and you were talking about how you could click on that first bird, like at Explore Napo, I think it was the ruddy pigeon, and you could see all kinds of pictures and and audio. But what's really cool is you can do that for every single bird list. So every list or every last scene from a region, once you click on that first bird, you can go to the next one in the upper right-hand corner, making like every single list a little mini field guide. And that to me is just like so cool, that just like an incredible resource to have.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for bringing that up, Seth. I didn't even know you could do that. You taught me something. So my contact information is here. Of course, K12lab@cornell.edu gets to me and Susan. We have a website, Facebook and Twitter. feel free to join us there. I'm tempted to stop screen sharing so that we can kind of see each other, and maybe even, if it's okay with you, Krista, enable our videos so that we can
Absolutely, please do,
have a
everybody
conversation for the next 5 minutes.
here. And for all of you, those of you that are tuning in on Facebook Live, I'm trying to monitor that as well. So if you have questions, go ahead and post those and I'll relay them the old-fashioned way, by voice. So anybody else, follow-up questions, curiosities?
Well, follow-up comment to what Seth said is, yeah, you can print checklists with pictures that people have taken in an area as well. And that's really cool to do.
I know, I think I'm going to try to add this. We did a field study with my AP kids in the fall. Every month they had to go out to the same tree and doing like observations. And so they learned how to use iNaturalist, but I think I'll add observations where they're specifically looking for maybe 5-10 minutes. What birds do you see? And add this aspect to it.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, Dawn, because I think one of the intimidating things about birding is maybe you think you have to go for an hour. A 5-minute point count is so valuable. And that's what I have tended to do when I'm in teacher groups. Like, we don't need to go birding for an hour and a half on a big traveling count, but isn't it cool for us to do like a 5-minute point count early in the day and in the afternoon for a week and just see what patterns are? Do we see the same kind of birds morning or afternoon? Bam, you've got an easy to implement investigation in, well, 10 minutes a day plus time in and out of the classroom.
Yeah. Plus attention span. 5 minutes is hard for them. And I think the COVID has actually helped with that. It's made them have to sit in quiet and do more things. My kids actually really liked they said that they really enjoyed being forced to go outside and just sit there and make observations. They saw plants that have been in their yards for years that they never realized. They found bugs that were there.
Oh, Dawn, the other thing you mentioned was iNaturalist. And if you all don't know about the Seek app, SEEK, you have to know about it. So whereas Merlin is eBird's complement, Seek is iNaturalist complement, and I mean, it has changed my life.
Michael just said the same thing. It's life-changing.
I love it. I spent like a couple of hours last Saturday just laying in the grass, identifying all the weeds in my yard. Is this native? Is it not native? And then you start reading, you're like, well, most of this is non-native and it's edible or it's medicinal, you know, and it's like fascinating, man.
Well, and for those of you that are tuning into
yes,
the workshop this summer with Morpho Institute that you've signed on for that, we are really hoping to do more with the eBird lists and iNaturalist and BioBlitzes and put some more formalized arms and legs around that. So any ideas that you have, we hope we can get those on the table and disseminate it out to our team, so, and our group. So thanks, everybody.
I've had my students this is Michael McAloon. I've had my students use the eBird downloadable data and basically query location, dates, and it's just, there's so much data that are in there. And with all the metadata that they had, two of my students, my honors students, developed a fantastic research paper looking at climate change data and sensitive species like American redstarts and bobolink. And they did a really great paper and poster presentation using that. And it's just, it's a phenomenal amount of data and a great tool. I love it.
thank you.
This is Janet. I have a quick question. So often, you know, I want to do place-based things, or the idea where you walk out and you hear a sound. And where would you go to start, either on Merlin or one of the other bird apps, where you could go out and just know what the common birds are, perhaps, and then play sounds and see if kids or adults can identify them by ear rather than just by sight? Because if you're in the forest, sometimes you hear them before you see them.
Yeah, I think it's similar. I I am trying to learn sound. I'm bad at it. It's just not the way my brain works. But you can play the sounds of the various birds, both the calls and the songs, and just get to know them by ear as well as by sight. And then Nancy also reminded me in the chat, we're coming out with soon sound ID tool in Merlin as well. So
Oh, cool.
2 years ago, they added a photo ID, kind of challenging because you've got to get a good picture of the bird. Easy with some species like waterfowl, but not so easy with warblers that are up in the tops of the trees or American redstarts. But you can identify by photo, and soon we'll be able to identify. It's like Shazam for birds. I haven't actually used it yet.
Awesome.
And that is coming out in June, actually, of this year is the public release date expected.
Ooh, that's exciting. Jen, I wanted to add too, if you're using the eBird app, you can, it links back to Merlin, so you can open Merlin from your eBird checklist.
Mhm.
And often I'm kind of addicted to it because I will go in eBird while I'm doing a checklist. Ooh, I didn't recognize what that bird sounded like, but I think it's this, so I'll click on it. It'll open Merlin, and then I'll go to the sounds and listen to it and cross-reference it. And I've totally used the two together.
I think that's one of the most exciting developments over the last year or two is the interconnection between Merlin and eBird that used not to be there. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate everyone so much for spending an hour with me tonight, thinking about and talking about birds. You've inspired me to get outside, I think, this weekend and maybe go birding while I'm at the farmer's market buying my organic veggies. I will get out my Merlin app and maybe go birding a little bit and submit a checklist. Please use us as a resource. We love interacting with teachers and supporting you in using these kinds of things in your classroom. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to us at any time.
Oh, thank you, Jen, so much, and Susan, thank you too for being such an excellent chat monitor with all those links. I've been trying to pass them along to Facebook Live too, but
Thank
we
you.
value our partnership and collaboration with Cornell and look forward to even more things in the future. So thank you. It was a wonderful evening and a great way to end this series of webinars for the school year. So now we'll put it to work this summer and we'll bring you back for a fall session. Okay, sound good?
Absolutely. Thank you, Krista. I really value our partnership and appreciate that you asked me to do this. And what a great group of teachers to present to. So thank you to everybody for coming.
Yeah, we're super lucky. We have an incredible community, and it's been wonderful to get together with all of them. A lot of them once a month. It's become a thing. So thank you.
Oh, you guys are gonna make me cry.
Well,
I hate end of the school year. I hate goodbyes.
if you're almost done, you can do it. And if you've got a ways to go, we're with you. So
Yes, absolutely.
the school year's almost over. So thanks, everybody. Have a
Good night,
wonderful
everybody. Have fun
weekend. Nice to
this
see
summer. Bye, Phil. So awesome to see you.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thank you,
Oh
Jen.
my God, I love seeing you.
Yeah, it's been too long.
It has been.